My mother's name is Linda. My father's name is Philip. And my mother decided that those two names meant to her beautiful friend.
Aww.
Isn't that nice? It's true. It's so
Yes, that's very nice. My kids will be named Hiss.
I know. I was like, when people put them together, they're like, "Oh, that would not work." Or some people discover they actually could have had like a really cool name for the kid.
Or Crother. Either Crother or Hiss. What do y'all think?
They would always know who they were talking about.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Do this.
Little folders.
Welcome, everybody. So.
If you'd have showed up last weekend,
I'm sorry, Garth was more interesting.
I didn't say that, right?
Leela's nice. And if you were a boy color, I would be say,
Settle down, class.
I like the energy.
You want to start over and hit record again, we won't judge you.
Nope, it's going to remain.
Is everybody here today? I haven't seen the whole room yet.
Yep.
Awesome. Welcome. All right. So just to get us started, I wrote up the notes from the POM that we did, and they are posted in the section 6. So that'll be part of your homework, is to review that, the notes, see if you want to add to it. You could leave comments just right inside there, or just be thinking about it if you don't have anything you want to add or change. But we will be coming back to that and kind of building off of that going forward. So just so you know, that's in there.
Does everybody know what Felinda's referencing?
Yes.
Good.
Great. And we're going to start today with the 2 activities that you did, the mnemonic first, and then we'll talk about the enablers worksheet. Let's just jump right into the mnemonic. So we are going to have you do these worksheets. We've already done the alignment meter. Now these are the next 2 in the series. There are a few more. Those are excellent resources as you're taking, your employees through this. You can do those in order, taking them through the COIN model. In a workshop setting, you would have to do it very quickly, but you guys have the luxury of spacing that out. So that's what we're doing with you guys too. So you'll have a chance to do it, sit with it, talk to each other about it, then do the next one, so that you'll actually hopefully get some application out of it before you have to jump to the next thing. So I'd love to hear what your experience was first with the mnemonic. Did it help? Fun? Did you hate it?
That's fun. They are all fancy.
So, does anyone want to share their mnemonic?
Tricia and Heather Womack both did quite an elaborate photo scenes.
I want to see yours. I sent them mine.
yours is like meaningful. Mine's just silly.
Picture.
Well, I actually, with Patricia's permission, we're going to use that as an example. So if anyone else wants to send them our way and is okay with that, we love that. But we were so thrilled to see Patricia's example, because it was like taking it above and beyond. And it's actually going to change the way I introduce it in a workshop, because I think finding images that really resonate personally about the theme is just a great way to go. We've had some people like draw little doodles, which I think is great, but I think for those that don't like to draw or just want to take that a step further, it's going to help you connect. And so I actually put them on our blog about the mnemonic. So thank you, Patricia.
Patricia's was awesome. Like I couldn't do that. I mean, I tried to make my words be about my theme, but I was just like, it wasn't working for me.
Well, I'll confess that I personally had a hard time with this one because I have like 3 eyes. So I just was like, I'm just memorizing the themes. Like I can just memorize these 5 words in order, So it's not for everybody. But now that I see what's possible, maybe I'll revisit mine too. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm very visual, so I was, but I like words too, but it helped me to kind of have a picture to put with each one. And then when I put them in the order that they occurred, you know, and prioritize them, I realized that that pretty much is how my day runs. I start out with, you know, I need to like ask myself, okay, what are you gonna do today? Because that's how I get myself out of bed, like wired, because I would much rather stay in bed, but. And then I kind of run through, okay, what are the steps I'm going to take to get there? And then I think I have to like tell myself just get up and do it. You know, so that's the discipline part. And then as I'm getting up, I'm kind of thinking through everything and making sure I haven't left anything out. And then I just get to it. So.
Well, and I think we've been, well, I won't say we, I have been probably giving too much. We talk about your deliberative so much, and I think you're analytical more than you're deliberative, because based on like the really great descriptions y'all had this week in the themes discussion pre-class video, like to me, deliberative is all about like risk. We're not all about, but highly about like risks and the dangers and the pitfalls that we might run into, and very, you know, and it's to me the analytical might be more where you excel. I mean, but it's just fascinating because it may not be true for everybody, but it's like the way yours all kind of merge together with. I mean, seriously, have you ever met someone that had so many themes like this, like intellection, achiever, discipline? I mean, that's crazy.
I love it.
Crazy in a good way. Good.
Well, it is so telling. Exactly, it is like that for everybody, that they work together so well, that they're supporting each other and kind of coming in when needed. But I loved that you pointed that out, that you feel like doing this kind of gave you an like you're like, that's actually how I sort of process things mentally to do, you know, to get in action. And I think that that's something that we often overlook, especially about our first themes. Like we really do lead with them. And so that highlights that like it is kind of something you can look through, like when you're sort of thinking about, all right, how am I going to approach this new thing in my life? You can come back to that and make sure you've kind of really given each one time, you know, and thought through, like, did I give myself time to look at the facts, analytical, make sure I know what they are so that I can properly assess the risk, so that I know what actions to take, and they've been very carefully thought through. I mean, that's, you know, that's something you can kind of return to. But I love that it helped highlight that process.
Well, and I did the enablers worksheet kind of at the last minute.
I want to know, what was your mnemonic?
AAIDA.
But did you do words?
It's like pictures.
Yeah,
It's
well, I
pictures.
did, so
You can do
A,
it anyway,
Well,
yeah.
I can think of a lot of things to
Ask
start with that A. Go ahead.
ask questions, deliberative was determine the steps.
Okay.
And then the next D, discipline was do it. And then intellect was inward reflection. And then the last one, achiever, is act. Enablers worksheet, I realized that if they're all working together, they're keeping each other out of ruts, because with analytical I could get into a rut, or with some of the others, but my achiever keeps me out of those ruts, or the discipline, because discipline is, you know what, just do it. Don't stop sitting there thinking about it so much. Just do something. Like even if you're trying to do something, you know, so
Yeah,
each other.
it's so true. Very well said.
What I like about this discussion, I really appreciated how conversant Nick was about these themes that he doesn't have. So he's actually like able to see how those themes show up in other people. And that to me represents the kind of growth that we want to see in people that go through Talent to Strength. I've taught a lot of workshops, and people don't even really understand their own top 5 after a full day. But to now see you being able to now talk about all the themes is really a great sign of progress.
Well, and I'll give an example. We just had our employee engagement survey and, my scores were low. But I just tackled it as, okay, what is the root cause here? And, how did I get to that place? And then if one of my, some feedback that I got was that, I never smile at anybody. So I just put it on my to-do list as an achiever. Because it's on my to-do list, smile. And I'll smile and check that off. So
That's great.
It's so true.
That is really good.
And I very much sympathize. We actually had this conversation just last week with another group, and the thinking.
Wait,
Okay. I know.
Oh, did you feel like we're cheating on you guys?
We got more fun with you guys.
They better than we are.
Oh, there he goes.
Competition.
Uh-huh.
I'm that too. Feel like you better.
So I have intellection as number one, and I often get called out. Now I have had a lot of practice with this. I didn't put it on my checklist because I don't have achiever, but I got this feedback years ago. I didn't really know why. The thinking face, the concentrating face, it's not, you don't smile when you do that naturally, usually. And so if you have some of these like discipline, or even though that's a different domain, analytical intellection, you're concentrating. You're not naturally, you're thinking about listening, what they're saying, and you're not necessarily just naturally going to be smiling. So to have it, if that's not something that comes natural and that's something you want to do, putting it on a list, that's a perfect way to hack the theme to help boost, an activity. But I had to do that too. And now it comes a lot more naturally to me, like, oh yeah, smile, because when I'm listening to somebody, that is not my natural, response. And somebody's like, what's wrong? Well, nothing. I just don't, that is a cue in our society. So I love that you put it on the list. I think it'll show up. You'll hear us talk a little more about that next week too, but such a good point.
It's actually interesting to go back and now that we've gotten to know you a little better, to go and see your themes, Belinda. They're more meaningful now that we know who you are a little bit more.
Right? I know whenever we introduce ourselves, we're kind of like, oh, this doesn't mean much yet.
Right.
But I like that, what Adam said, I just want to support that, because do you feel now that, you've covered all but, the one domain for next week, do you feel more conversant with each other in the themes? Do you feel like things are coming like, oh, this is happening because of this, and we could do this instead, or this is going to help this area? Do you feel that amongst the group?
I don't know about y'all, but everyone that got an evaluation from me this year has their theme referenced throughout. So, I mean,
Oh, that's cool.
yes, I just turned it into verbs and stuff for people that weren't in the class, but yeah.
Mhm.
It kept popping out. So.
I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry.
With my cup.
Hello?
Patricia said that she did a process mapping on Friday, and her themes kept popping up in her discussions too.
Well, everybody in the room, because we were kind of teasing each other. Oh, that's
Yeah.
your woo coming out.
Yeah.
Not sure what that coming out.
It was a process map for onboarding new hires and going through all the steps. And Pam was in there, myself and Patricia and Yvette, who's the HR coordinator, which I don't have her themes yet. She was pretty quiet throughout the whole time too. So, they were popping up everywhere.
And we could recognize them in each other. That was the
Yeah.
cool thing. We could say, oh, that's your whatever.
Yes, I love that, because once you start seeing, because it is unique to people, like, Patricia's analytical is going to look different than somebody else's analytical. And so to see exactly the, unique person in front of you and how it's popping up, The developer is going to look different in somebody than someone else. You can then start really honing in on accessing kind of that communicative power between you guys and the application of it. It's just really a fun process, I think.
That's great. I want to make 2 quick points. One, I really like Nick's comment that he integrated this into your evaluations. So that's what it looks like when you begin integrating StrengthsFinder into the culture. You embed it into those kinds of developmental conversations, whether it's a formal performance review or, a spot performance check, just while helping a staff member through a project or something like that. The other point I want to make is about the mnemonic in general before we move away from it. The key principle here is that if people do not remember their top 5 themes, then they don't develop a relationship with StrengthsFinder and this whole content. So the exercise of creating a mnemonic, I don't think it's particularly an exciting activity, but it's an absolutely critical activity. And so we don't skip it. Everybody who works with us on StrengthsFinder, we want them to create a mnemonic of their top 5 themes so they can begin to memorize it. The other thing is that usually, it takes practicing the mnemonic a couple of times, because you might have like an expression or a phrase that you use, but then the words in it don't capture the theme. So you have to remember your phrase, and then you have to say, okay, just like Patricia did, my first D is for deliberative. My second D is for discipline. And you just do that 3 times, and pretty much you should remember it. So that's the importance of this activity. It's really about connecting, helping people connect with their themes. So it's memorizing your themes, and then it's understanding what your themes mean. And then it's about, how do I see those themes in myself? And this is where people who know you well can really become an asset, because they'll say, oh yeah, deliberative. It's like when if you're talking to an old childhood friend, you'd be like, oh yeah, when we'd go and hang out and play, you'd always want to set up your toys in a certain way, or in school, you'd always have your colored markers, and then even if you or your employees don't connect with one of the themes, someone who knows you well will help you connect to them.
Anybody else want to share their mnemonic or their experience with it?
You didn't say what yours was. What was that?
It says, sea life roams around amethyst reefs.
Oh, wow.
Say it one more time.
Sea life roams around amethyst reefs.
Oh, nice.
Amethyst I struggle with. It's her birthstone.
It's my
so she
birthstone.
can remember that.
And there's lots of purple in the picture.
That's great. Strategic, restorative, achiever, activator, relator.
I know mine. I don't even have a hard time knowing which A comes first. So I just.
You're an achiever.
But I try to make it be like some slick sentence that actually meant like what my themes do, but I just was like, never mind. I like seahorses.
Seahorses forever.
Yeah.
Does anybody have fun mnemonics?
I tried to do mine around the same like you did. So I came up with revive life by driving inspiration.
See, that's great.
Oh,
that's
that's
beautiful.
good.
I was trying to do that.
Revive life.
So it hits my responsibility. It hits my developer. I have to have input to be able to know what their inspiration is, to develop them on it.
Say it one more time, Heather.
Revive life by driving inspiration.
Great.
I love it.
Lyle love it.
Hey, I see him all the time. Like, we're not friends, to be really clear, but he lives in in Spring area.
So you're
I
not friends.
like, to be really clear, he's not on my radar. But we eat at this steak restaurant called Perry's, and he comes in his big black truck, and he gets to go and walks out with his like
is his
designer
hair really
jeans, and he keeps the side short and the
Yeah.
top. And then I was at Starbucks the other day, and he pulled up in his truck, and I'm like doing that, like, who is that? Like, do I know him? Not like celebrity spotting, because like that, like we don't do that in Houston. And so then it was awkward because then I realized he was looking at me, because he was in the drive-thru, not wanting to come in and be stared at, I guess. And I'm staring at him. I'm like, who's that man? Why do I know him? Is he a teacher? Anyway, and I was like, oh damn, I did what I didn't want to do. I love it.
And he's right now saying, you know, there's this strange man
Everywhere I
that I
go.
keep running
I
into
go eat at
everywhere.
Perry's, Starbucks.
Is he following me? Am I following him?
Yeah, I'm not going to introduce myself, but that's cool. Anybody else have a great mnemonic? Karen, I'm sure you have something very thoughtful.
No, it's
Oh, what is
really
it?
not. No, it's like silly, it's just stuff. It doesn't tie into like the words
You don't
itself.
have
It's
to.
just something.
Just
silly.
remember the first
Oh,
one.
you remember it.
Sea life have anything to do with being strategic?
Patricia kind of ruined it going first.
Yeah. We all just want to go home now.
Mine, it's love always results in caring or compassion.
That's
That's
great.
lovely.
And that fits your personality.
Yeah.
It's touchy-feely.
Nice.
Well, yeah, you've got some of that going on with your later stuff.
Only a few of you, not many.
Right?
Lyle, your theme too, your mnemonic as well.
Chris, did you have a great one?
I didn't need one. Mine was more memory. Mine was just AEI, it's like the vowels, and then the last two were my initials.
Oh, that's
Oh.
That is in the mnemonic.
It is in the mnemonic.
Yeah.
That's great. That worked out.
What about our education guru? Do you have a great one?
She came up
I
with
don't know. Do satisfied adults win everything?
Do satisfied adults win everything? No, they don't. And you can still be satisfied.
Want instead of win.
Lisa, what do you have?
I feel really bad. Like I should have gone first.
I feel really bad, and I'm last because mine's really corny.
next.
I know, I didn't hear that.
Let's not talk about that. What is yours, Lisa?
Mine is running races and inching along because that's what I feel like I do.
Oh my God!
See, mine's
I
like
truly feel like
completely-
that's what I do.
I love that.
Rhythm and weight is what that's.
Yes.
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 Okay.
We'll make Nick say his again.
Yeah, it was just corny. It just for me to remember. I do play racquetball a lot. I don't.
These are great.
But that was a way to
I
remember
actually
it.
like that one.
It was a way for me to remember it.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Oh,
But the
that-
problem is I played racquetball. I just don't play it. I need to start again. Yes.
What if this like makes you start to play more?
So mine is cats can't ignore woolly parrots. My mind's clearly growing. So Belinda, in the future, learning opportunities. Don't start with the example.
I don't know. You guys knocked this one out of the park. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, I didn't do the exercise this week. Really? I saw you working on it. No,
Yeah,
no.
really get an F on that.
Now Patricia's going to get work bullied. Okay.
Everybody did great.
Friends with HR.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks for sharing, everyone. That was really great. So, okay, well, let's move on to the enablers. Let's talk about that. Thoughts?
I have a hard time, I think, distinguishing between which one of my themes is doing what, because I feel like they're all meshed into one.
I
I
agree with
agree.
that.
So, yeah, that's my thought.
That's absolutely true. And you're going to see that more and more. Like occasionally, a certain activity will call forth one a little bit more, perhaps, but they're always all firing together and they don't really extract themselves completely. And so that's why it's a little weird to look at them in a bubble. Like when you find out somebody's, it's like, okay, well, I know that person has belief. I know some behaviors associated with belief and I can recognize that, but you really will have to figure out like, okay, that's how it shows up for that person. And there's a communication process in that, but absolutely it is hard to parse apart these, things that are just all happening all at once. So, the reason we do this one, again, it's about connecting to the theme and observing how it shows up for you. So we do make you do that, but we definitely recognize that it is sort of like there's a lot of overlap and it will influence. Like you'll see, your activator is going to be completely different than somebody else's, but there will be some overlap. Like most activators don't like meetings that I know, or long meetings. They don't mind one that's like really on point and we're getting to the things we're going to do. Like that's okay. But if you've got a long meeting, whoa, most activators I know at least, not so much. But the other stuff is going to show up. It's going to steer your activator in a very different way. So absolutely. Other thoughts?
So like my relator, so I have 4 of them, the strategic, restorative, achiever, and activator, I feel are really hard to tell apart. Because it's hard to know which one is leading, I think, when I'm doing certain things. But the relator was a little bit easier because it's different than those. But I kind of feel like relator, I feel like its purpose for me is to like build trust and loyalty on my teams, but really that's so I can get more stuff done. So the achiever. So I don't know. I mean, it's just, they all kind of, it's hard for me to.
Well, you are not alone with the relator kind of using that. It's not a manipulative thing. It's just that you're building that team to fulfill the tasks that need to be done. Absolutely, those go together. And in fact, what I know about those two in combination particularly is you're probably calling on the team members for certain tasks that you know they're going to accomplish. And there's probably a list of tasks. I know one person that has those two, and she actually has on her phone a list for each one of her team members, and she will go in like on her phone and like play with the list and add to it and change it over. Okay, this will be better for this person. Now they know about that, so they kind of tease her about it, but she keeps them organized. She'll open up that list and they'll have their meeting, and she definitely builds the relationships to support that.
Chris, what about you over there? You've been so quiet.
Yeah. The first one I did was adaptability. So I kind of view that one as kind of like we discussed earlier, kind of just going with the flow. And some examples of that is, for imaging, we're constantly canceling and adding on and just kind of trying to fit in stuff where it can't be fit in. But I just feel that having that theme it doesn't let that stuff bother me. Just kind of, it is what it is. It's got to get done. So I think it fits good.
You never hit a wall with that one? That it's finally like, okay,
Which one?
I've adapted as much as I can adapt.
Really.
I'm not adapting anymore.
Not really.
No?
It's kind of always been that way.
No wonder which one side says no.
But isn't that interesting? Like, what theme do you ever take on enough responsibility do you ever not strategize? Are you ever done wooing people? You know, it's like,
Yes.
okay, maybe, but
Well, but that's the thing. Like each of these themes have such a high capacity in that domain. So if you find that correct environment, individual fit, that so that is something, Chris, you're experiencing on a daily basis, where that would drive other people completely crazy. You're like, no problem, let's do this. This needs to be done. Let's put this here. And that would be a great example of a great environment individual fit right there. Absolutely.
Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I struggled with how I was supposed to do this, if it was truly tying it back to the descriptions or not, but I'll just go with it. So, individualization. I think that what it does, the purpose of that theme for me is allows me to see other strengths. So I think it kind of allows me to look at people individually and pull what their talents might be. I didn't have an example of when I did it, but in a meeting that I was in, Heather actually identified strengths and talents of the other people in the room in front of me. So I was like, oh, that's what I should be, that's how you notice and tell what everyone should be doing, their strengths, their talents, or whatever. So if I think for me, my next level of that would be to self-identify those things instead of going, oh, that's what it was after the fact. That would help me grow. And it would help my team do better because I'm not trying to take that on myself and fight with responsibility.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to reorder mine. I wanted to put them in the order that I used them and check them all off, so I could learn about the knowledge that I needed first. So then I can analyze it, plan, try it, do it, be successful, and be first, and then start it over. So I had it all planned. But so I drew a circle how I was going to do those things all together.
But do you see all of those working
together? Right.
They don't have to be in a certain order, though.
But I know in my mind I need them to be a certain order.
Well, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
That's my achievement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and learner, because that we haven't covered that so much yet, but learner often likes a good structure.
So we're talking about the mnemonic worksheet, right?
No, we moved on to enablers.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. I was thinking enablers, but I said mnemonic. All right, yeah. So I mean, in terms of like next level, like well, let me just ask you, which of the 3 questions for each theme was the most difficult for you?
The next
level.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, but I didn't want to. You go ahead. What's that?
I was just saying, I thought it was I actually left some of my next level blank because I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means, I don't know what that means. I mean, other than I'm not creative enough to come up with what next level looks like in some of this. I don't know.
Well, I was thinking on the next level, like for some of my top 5 themes, almost feel like, for instance, includer, almost feel like there's not a next level for me because I'm so aligned with that one, and I do it like every day, and so I don't. Maybe I'm just, like I said, not creative enough to kind of figure out what else I could do to take that to the next level.
Yeah, it's the most difficult one to answer. I'm going to share with you an example of one of our. This is a Gallup certified coach who also went through our program. And so for his analytical theme, he thought next level would be to dial it down and switch to his focus theme and accept it as accept it is useful to a point only. That you can only analyze so far. So for him, his analytical is so overpowering that for him, dialing it down and realizing it's not the solution to every problem. So that for harmony, he said to apply to active selling, promotion, anticipate reservations people have and address them. He was trying to grow his strengths coaching practice here. And so his harmony would get in the way of, not wanting to make people feel like he was selling to them. For focus, he thought a next level would be to articulate his plan, write down the steps and sequence, and then implement it with a time frame. I know some of these themes aren't represented in the group, but it's just good to explore. For context, it's about building a network of skilled support and colleagues to underpin sense of belonging and confidence and direction. So using his context to build rapport and so forth. And then restorative, which I think we do have a couple in this group, he thought it would be to articulate the problem to be solved, define it, and then confirm the plan and solution, seek each external resources of affirmation and support. So anyway, those are some examples of how, one person thought about next level for the themes.
Some people also will look to the knowledge piece of the formula. For example, seeking out resources like books or articles or new research, say along the line of strategic, like how can I improve my knowledge about the steps of, strategic, whatever it is, area you're focusing on. Same with, that I believe is very dependent on the person. Like I wouldn't tell somebody who didn't, like for me, give me a good book on a subject, I will plow through it, I will enjoy myself. That's not how everyone wants to build their knowledge base. So you want to actually look to your themes to find those, areas. Like if you do want to look, take things to the next level with the knowledge piece, look to your themes to sort of even help you shape how you're going to do that. Like Nick could make it into a game, and give yourself a competition element in there. If you don't do that, if you're like, oh, I should just be reading up on this, and you don't like to do that, you're going to be suffering. You're going to be trying to weakness build, even though it's a talent. You want to actually complement your learning style around that. So that is an area you could look to if you wanted to say, well, I'm not sure how I would take it to that next level. That's one area to consider, the knowledge building.
Oh,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He said that was a good idea.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Great.
She heard you. She just wanted you to repeat it.
I just needed to hear it again.
Yes, Felinda, it was a very good idea.
I think it was yours initially. Is that what you'd like?
Oh, I didn't know that. Yes, do. Give me credit. Thank you, Nick, for complimenting my idea that was co-opted via Felinda.
She's hijacked it. I saw the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's something we don't, we often think to seek out learning around stuff we don't know yet, but if learning comes easily, if adaptability comes easily, we don't seek out more of something we already know, but you actually will experience greater gains if you do that. I mean, it's like multiplying instead of adding, basically. So it's worth looking into and considering.
Yeah, I mean, really, for any of these topics, there's like books, and Patricia's read half of them already. But there are books on, for me, like example, communication, like competition. I mean, ideas, brainstorming. I mean, there's so many. Okay, I do want to ask you a question though, because as I was doing evals too, like I was thinking about, like some people are more like you use the example of like, you know, like always smile. And so it's like, how do we're not trying to, if you're going strengths-based culture, you're not trying to create a place that you just focus on the weaknesses, right? Like, I need you to be good at all the things you're not. I mean, but I think some things too, I guess maybe it just depends on the particular theme, you know, like it's important, I think, to be somewhat relational as an executive. I mean, I don't know. I was just trying to think, like, how do you do this in a way, like, I'll share with Chris, like, one of the things I'd share with Chris is, like, Chris, you're a great leader. You're just so damn quiet. I need you to be more of an outspoken leader, you know, something like that. And, like, is that fair to say that to somebody?
So I think if there's two separate things there. One is being a leader, and two is being outspoken as a way to be a leader. So I would zoom in on what you would mean by leading in terms of, like, what would you like to see be different without imposing the outspokenness, because that's very difficult. That would be asking Chris to change his personality and demeanor, but maybe there's a different way that he could achieve the same outcome you're looking for using his themes, and that would be strength-based. You're allowing him to play to those qualities, and I don't want to make it uncomfortable. You know, like, we could use a random example of, like, business development. I want you to make more sales. Make more sales by networking more. Well, networking is one very important way to make sales, but maybe there's other ways that would be more relational, less woo-oriented and more relator-oriented to make sales. So it'd be looking for that way, partnering with the person to help them find a way. Because if you were to say, Adam, I want you to be more of a detail person, that would be a huge stretch for me. But if we can individualize it, because individualization is my number two, if we could use, if I can develop strategies, which is my number one, strategic, find the best pathway to be more detail oriented, you can work with me to get what you need from me. That makes sense?
Well, and I was gonna say, like, I think Lisa and Patricia both gave good examples of using their own strengths to kind of offset, or their own themes to offset a different one. Like, Lisa, whenever I work with her, I'm like, get out of the weeds. And she's like, but I really like being in the weeds. But then I'm like, well, just kill the weeds on your list. Because what I want her to do is kill the weeds. I don't want her to be in them anymore. So I'm like, well, just put it on your list as an achiever to kill the weeds. And she's like, oh, you just want me to kill the weeds? Okay, got it. And I'm like, that's great. But, and Patricia was using the same example about her achiever, or putting your smiling on a list, or your achiever won't let you overanalyze it. So if you're being too analytical, then your achiever can, like, snap you out of that too.
Or my deliberative is, like, part of my process map for going downstairs is, one step will be go in this department and stop and say hello.
No, I think this is very valuable dialogue. And just to be clear, I did say I don't expect you to turn to an extrovert. I mean, yeah, I did, but the idea was just, you know, like, as someone that's respected as a quiet leader, you know, being a little more outspoken when it comes to supporting an initiative or something. I mean, these are just examples, but that's kind of where I was going with that. But it's helpful because you're right. Use their strength to gain consensus. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it really made me think too. I mean, I think it's a really good point because, I mean, using Chris as an example, and I don't know all of his 5, but if we could, as a group, look at each person and say, okay, what are your top 5? And so what kind of leader would you be with those top 5? You know, how can you use your top 5 to be the leader that we see in you? You know, I'm never going to be that extrovert, and I'm never going to have woo because it fell off of my list.
Top 33.
But I can still get up there and use my talents to convey messages, or to set to communicate a vision, to to provide the structure that's needed. You know? And that's where if you look at each person individually and then you put us together as a team, we're like the the X-Men or the Justice League of America or whatever.
Or a puzzle.
I think it's a good example because sometimes woo doesn't work. Like, so today, woo was trying as hard as it could to win over the situation, and woo was not working. But Patricia did this amazing job at articulating like what we were going to do to fix the situation. And even though she's not like communicator, that's not her big thing, or extrovert, she just took over that moment and just really articulated what was going to happen next. While Woo was like balled up in the corner.
I actually want to tell you, like, I mean, it was killing me at the moment not to be like, I'm sorry, I need you to stop your meltdown. Patricia, that is unfreaking believable.
It was amazing. I was like, what is going on?
A superpower. Like, because we give her a hard time because, you know, not always the easiest to talk to if you don't know her. And in someone's difficult moment, I know you're so damn sensitive. And in someone's difficult moment, she was the hero. You know, like she was the one that was like, because I was trying, I used wit, I used everything in the toolbox, and it was just like, the person was in a place I hadn't even been to that street before, and and she's just like, you know,
I analyzed the whole situation.
She did.
Like, here's the steps we need to take to get to where.
She's like, I get it.
And then my harmony kicked in. It's like, we just want to resolve the conflict.
And the person just turned around and was like, thank you. I think you hear me.
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
I don't even know why they work here. I'm invited to the meeting. Here's what happened. At the end of that meeting, the person that they were expressing concerns about, like they texted me because there was another side of the story, right? And so I just responded back and I'm like, oh, I've already spoken to the other person. I think I have an understanding of what's going on. Do you need solid? I'm way overbooked today. Could you visit with Patricia? I think she has really good stuff.
He's like, I'm getting out of this?
Even, you know, I don't know if it's just being a dumb guy or what it is, but I had nothing. I've tried to fix that situation, and just saying like, knock it off doesn't work. So, because knock it off is like a last resort for me. Like, anyway, and that was the next thing, and I didn't go to knock it off. Patricia stepped in and saved me from that, and she was like, tears dried up. She floated out of there. Never.
If you need me again, shine this light into the sky. And then there's music played in the background.
Awesome. She's done that before, and it's often the really crazy situation that you're like, I have no idea what to do with this person. And for whatever reason, the most serious freaking person on the team always has because I can fix anything, but you heard me say you can't fix crazy, and like, Patricia can. No, that woo fiddle, she shattered, and she takes the shards and whittles like a flute or something.
Well, I think that's like a perfect example, and I think you'll all start to recognize this as like those moments where like, okay, this theme is clearly not a match for the situation, but this is the theme I use. So, you know, instead of trying to like, and then you'll know, like, I think you'll start to see how to draft off of each other. Like, okay, no, I got this. My themes are a match for this. I know what, you know, and to just sort of, you know, dial in, dial down what's needed for that moment. And that's what's going to make the strength of the leadership among you grow. Because inside of that, less and less, you'll have to resort to authority. More and more, it will evoke this discretionary effort, and it's just a really cool process. But absolutely, that is a great example that you all can kind of remember and be like, oh, well, what I'm doing, and I'm doing what I know to do, doesn't seem to be working. Who might, you know, who might be a better match for this? That's a kind of really perfect real life example.
I want to add, sorry, go ahead.
But she did it. I mean, every time the crazy people she can reach, like they feel heard or analyzed or deliberated on. I don't know what it is, but you just get it.
You know, and it is interesting thinking back, you know, like even in school, I did really well in psych. For some reason, I can just like hone down and figure out what's this person's real issue, what's the core of this, and that's what you speak to them about. You know, not about their
Yeah, I keep trying to solve the
behavior that's
problem.
going on,
Yeah.
but you just say, where's this coming from? And that's where I need to meet them.
Yeah. I kept trying to solve it,
Yeah.
and she didn't want it solved. She just
Right.
wanted to be upset.
Right.
Yeah, it's really. I'm telling
That
y'all,
was interesting.
the Academy Award goes.
What'd you think?
Well, I want to thank StrengthsFinder, and I want to stress this though, because this is really important. It gets to all the things we're talking about here. What we're talking about is outcome. So getting this person situated who was having a hard time, having a meltdown, leading with, you know, more vociferously on something, with more whatever. So those are outcomes, and what you have here is somebody's pathway to get there and another person's pathway to get there. You know, these are all different pathways that could be used to get to the outcome. So when working with people, tell them the outcome you want. As the person in your position, you have the right, you have the need to ask people for things. You need them to perform at certain levels. And so you have the right to ask for outcomes that are part of the job and part of your purview and your responsibilities. And how they get there can vary widely from person to person. And what you want to do there is maybe not tell them the outcome you want, but don't tell them how to get there, although you can help them think of ways to constructively get there that they may not think of on their own. And that's why coaching and managing are very kind of difficult at times, because on one hand you got to manage and you got to say, I need this outcome, this would be good for us, we need this, and I need you to do it. And then the how to do it is where you switch to a coaching mode to say, let's explore, what assets do we have available to us? Oh, we have your 5 themes. Let's look at how to harness those, because you know you can do those.
Very good. Thanks for that, Philinda.
On behalf of her saying this to you, on my behalf, you're welcome.
We are. I just flagged a note that I think we should, in a future session, provide some structure around how to do that in a performance review, or how to have that conversation, maybe some steps to implement, because exactly what Adam said is the way to get there. And then I think it would just be helpful maybe to have a few questions to ask, things to talk over. You know, we'll figure out something. We already have some ideas. I know Adam does too. So would that be helpful? I think what I'm hearing is it's going to come up.
Oh, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new way of thinking.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it's such a valid question. It's like, well, you know, and we all are coming from our own prism. You know, for Nick, leadership is more vocal, and that is what it represents. And so, or, you know, there's some woo in there. There's gonna be woo in there. There should be. That's Nick's operating system. So I think to help look at how to get to those outcomes, but if you don't really know, like you're not experiencing other operating systems, so how would you help that person? And this will be coming up for you time and time again if you're going to implement this tool. So I think it'd be helpful to just have some guidance around what that conversation could look like. because it absolutely can be more fun. Well, let's actually get into, unless anybody has anything more to say about the enablers worksheet, I'd love to get into talking a little bit about the executing themes. Anything else about the enablers worksheet? Okay, let's jump into the executing themes. So, insights that you gained, questions that you have after watching the video. There's a number of executing themes in the room, so.
I'm going to kind of show you what some of them are as a reminder.
Okay.
All right. We have achiever, arranger, belief, consistency, deliberative.
I have a question to start off. Chris, if you feel comfortable, I remember you said you and your wife share consistency. Does that show up in different ways for the two of you? Is there some overlap? You don't have to answer, but if you'd like to.
No, I think there's a lot of overlap actually. We kind of treat people the same way. Honestly, there's really not a lot of difference there. Lisa, you've known both of us. You could probably say we're, I don't know, it's kind of hard.
Which
For
one is
consistency.
Him and Casey both have
We
consistency.
both have that one.
Are y'all rule people? That's interesting. So yeah, I mean, y'all are the rule people. Y'all are those people. Okay.
With rules?
Oh yeah. But that's a key.
Well, she is more so than I am because she also has discipline.
Oh, and I'm only kidding about this. But to that point, you go ahead.
What are her top five?
Her top one was discipline. Consistency was number 2 for her, and then relator, belief, and includer.
Well, and I think what's interesting there is she would have more roles with discipline, more order, right?
Yes.
And adaptability doesn't need that so much. However, consistency is going to want those rules to be clear and fair.
Clear and fair. I like that. That should be like the hallmark for consistency. Like on his t-shirt, it should say clear and fair because that really does describe it. Good job. On behalf of Nick, I want to thank you for
the need to have to abide by them. I said I'm aware of the rules, but I don't feel the need to, abide by them or follow them every day religiously like she does.
Yes. That is
I would imagine that's
Marianne and Robbie have arranger. Oh, we're talking about consistency.
But it's interesting that, so for example, I thought one that I'd like to see if you had any questions on. So sometimes the difference between adaptability and arranger, because they're both very much of the moment, can be a little confusing. Did you have any questions? Did it feel, do we want to talk about that a little more? Because that's one of those where the overlap can seem like, well, why, what's the difference?
Did y'all struggle? I felt like consistency made sense. Consistency seems like it's about rule following. And a ranger seemed to me just somebody that had a lot of structure around the order that things need to get done. I think like Adam described it well in the video where he said adaptability and achiever. I mean, that made sense to me, but did y'all struggle with that? I thought it was really clear on that one.
Good.
On which one?
The difference in arranger and consistency.
Oh, I meant adaptability, and I kind of went outside of our.
I'm sorry.
Adaptability is very much of the moment, but it's not one we covered in the video.
That was relationship themes last week.
Yeah. And I just wondered if you had any questions about that, because those two, even though they're in different domains, are of the moment.
Didn't I ask you about this like an hour ago, Chris?
I thought it was, I don't think we compared or those two though.
Well, it doesn't sound like there was a question on that. So, but arranger is very, very different than adaptability about the moment. So if there's not a question, we can totally move on from that. But actually, do we have any arrangers in this group?
Yeah.
Sherry's
We do. Sherry, how does that one show up for you? Do you want to talk about that one a little bit?
I mean, I was just thinking whenever I was listening to Adam and they were talking, or listening to you, and you were talking about traveling with an arranger and kind of that suitcase piece of it where I'm packing. I'm very, I like to arrange things specifically in the suitcase, kind of almost by day and how that might be a little OCD actually, but almost like how I know what we're going to be doing per day, and then I can kind of, that's how I kind of arrange the.
Yep, that sounds like an arranger. I don't think that sounds like OCD. That's very classic arranger.
But so when y'all were talking in the video and y'all were talking about that, and you were talking about traveling with an arranger, because I think your mom is an arranger.
Yes.
I kind of started thinking about it because we're going to be traveling in June, and I'm like, I don't think I'm hard to travel with, but so.
Oh no, they're pretty organized travelers. In fact, I was going to ask, so here's a question for arranger. This has come up recently, and I'm curious if this is unique to an arranger, because they're so clear on like this event, these sequences have to happen in this time frame around this event, or this is time for this now. I've heard an arranger describe that sometimes they're just waiting for the clock to get to where they can get started to do those things they know have to kick into action. Do you experience that? Like if you know you have a big project or an event that's happening and you're all planned and ready to go, are you kind of like waiting for the clock to get there so you can get going?
Just laughing because Heather was like, yeah, waiting for 5 o'clock because I know what needs to happen after that. Yeah. So.
A good one.
Don't correct me, and because I don't see you as a big planner. Where it talked about on the fly, like I think you're fine getting it done, but I don't, and that's my lack of knowledge about how you operate. But I don't see you as someone that's like, I'm going to do this, and then. But you always have a list. You always have a list. In fact, I could go like, what about this? And you're like, it's right here. And you find it on your book and you show me. So did we lose Adam? So we're gonna go. Okay, we'll do that. We'll watch a video. Wait, is that a cat? Wait.
What in the world?
Yeah.
What is happening?
So good.
I can't see that.
It's some kind of band?
Dave.
What is it?
That was fun. Anyway. Yeah, did y'all see that too?
I saw something, but that's nothing I know of.
So, what were we talking about?
Planning, and knowing where things are and stuff.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not asking to explain. I mean, like, do you plan out your way in advance? Because I see you get it done, but I just felt like you were more about the moment. Like you were like, this is now a priority.
It's yes and no. I think I don't. It's planned out. I think I used arranger more along the lines of like in the moment, not necessarily planning not necessarily planning for a week or two out. I think the arranger for me happens in the moment, and then it's like starting to arrange in my head, what needs to be done, or somebody needs to sit, or those types of things.
Yes,
yeah.
That's it. The of the moment is where it has similarity to adaptability, but what makes it different is the optimal configuration. That's the key. Just like Fair and Claire, is the key for consistency. Optimal configuration is the key for arranger. That's what you're looking for. And sometimes it could only happen in the moment. You know, like you can't really plan optimal configuration 3 months in advance because so much can change. It's not
Right.
very optimal to plan that far ahead. But arrangers are really good at sequencing in the moment. And that's when your arranger really thrives, by the way. And other people can't really see what you see. It's this intuitive sense for how things should be organized, and it almost would take too long to explain it to everybody else. So it's like, let me just do it.
Yes.
Where I see that fitting in with Sherry is, you know, if there's an HR issue, she'll kind of guide us into the timing of those talks and where we need to sit in the room and who needs to talk first and what needs to be brought up first and then what should come last, and so that it makes it smoother.
That's quintessential arrangement right there. That's exactly it.
I've noticed if I get overwhelmed and I'm telling you some of the things that I have to do, you'll start arranging for me. You need to start with this and then do this.
I do.
Yep. Don't worry, get this done.
That's
great.
actually something you could come to Sherry with if you need help. I would imagine that's fun for you, Sherry.
I do. So cover later, so that kind of ties into that.
Yeah.
Any questions on any of the others or any thoughts? Do you recognize yourself in any of the descriptions?
No, I did laugh about consistency though, because Chris and I were talking about the rule piece, and I didn't really know where that fit in. Like, my wife's theme, she's a rule person, and it's really hard because I don't know what I have that makes me hate rules.
Oh,
But-
Oh, what is it?
But
She, I think she knows.
oh,
ideation and woo.
oh, okay. So yeah, that. So but
Ideation, if they hear a rule, they're ready to like think of a way to break it usually.
but
Yeah.
the example I gave Chris is like Amy and I will get to like a ride at the amusement park or whatever, and there's like no one in line, and there's those little turnstile things that you're supposed to like weave all through. Amy's like following the whole dang thing, and I'm like, let's just go into the thing, and she said, you can't do that. Like, you know, like she'll follow it. Like I'll be at the line waiting to go on the ride, and she's still like on the third row of the thing, you know. So,
That's perfect. Yeah. People with consistency don't want to cut corners. You're not an exception to the rule. I'm not an exception to the rule. Another one that has this in common is belief. And so we haven't really talked about that at all. And Heather T is the one that has belief. And so I wanted to see if you had anything to share or ask about in regards to belief, because I think people need to understand belief if you're on team with someone with belief. Don't mess with belief.
But I am family oriented. Family is important to me. And core values those are important to me also.
Good.
Because I just don't see it.
yeah, because you seem kind of easygoing. So either you're amazing at like biting your tongue, or as I read the belief structure, it sounds like somebody that's a little more rigid about what they're willing to do.
Oh,
And
that's a great point.
along with, in my opinion, that's not you at all.
I know. Well, and I
Go ahead. Sorry, Heather.
have, like, there are some things that I completely agree.
Yeah,
If it's not, what?
that's belief in a rut, like what he was describing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I see. She's a mature version.
Yeah, like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Okay, Belinda's dying to say something, so.
I can wait till Heather's done.
Oh, go ahead. I was just kind of trying to figure out how I can relate to belief. I mean, I have certain things that I'm like, no, you can't do that. But
Well, I think it does show there is a mature versus immature, and the mature would be more comfortable, with sort of where they are. But there's also a good example of individual environment fit here, so that you are in a place that it does not bump up against your values and beliefs. So you choose an environment that I would suggest that there are probably, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, there are probably environments that would have such a different value system for you that would just be such a terrible, like you would just be like, no, I could not possibly work there or be there. that just goes against everything I care about. And that's where you start to see somebody with belief really get rigid, because they will not compromise those values. But if you're in an environment that matches them and supports them, there's no reason to, like, that's going to be supportive, and you're going to actually add to that. So it gets the reputation of being rigid, but I know so many people with belief that they just aren't. I mean, because they know to choose those environments, they know themselves, they're not trying to impose. And that's a big thing I want everybody to understand about belief. Some people with belief will try to impose on others, but that's an immature version. The ones that are more mature, they will not impose their own values. They actually care about your values. Like, if someone has different values than Heather, she's probably not going to be like arguing with that. She's going to respect it. And that's a big
yesterday that somebody was telling me something I would never ever do, and I was like, hey, I'm not judging, more power to you. If that's what you want to do, go for it, but don't ask me to help you.
And that's where you get the crossover. Like, if that person, I don't know if it's a man or woman, if that person was like, oh no, I'm gonna make you go along with it, belief would be like, absolutely not, I'm just not doing it. Yeah, like, it's just not going to happen. Like, you cannot convince. So that's where you would start to see it. But my guess is, just knowing this, the group so far, it's a good individual environment fit for belief. And I do want to say just one word about consistency. Rules are not rules just because, like, it's not a rule for a rule's sake. It's a rule to support fairness. Like, they want people to have an equal shot. That's important to know, because otherwise, because the rule is like the visible thing, the reason for it is not. That can show up in belief too. It's like sometimes like, oh, I'm not doing that is what you're seeing, but the reason is the value, the personal value. So, any question? Does that help clarify it a little bit?
I guess I just don't, like, on the enabler worksheet, how do you use belief to go to next level? When is it appropriate to bring that out?
Yeah, that's great.
Question. It can show up really well if you can identify, if you want to take it to the next level. You don't have to, but if you want to, and you could identify things in either the organization or your personal life that you feel very strongly about, that you would like to advocate for, you could then kind of guide some of your activities more in that direction, because either those communities, those causes, those initiatives, you're going to have a lot of power and commitment behind them if they are aligning with your beliefs. And the more they align with your view of the world, the more kind of energy you're going to have behind that advocacy. So if you're already doing that, maybe you don't need to take it to the next level. But if that could be a way for belief to sort of look around and say, what are some of the causes I'd like to see further in it?
Well, and maybe for you, because you're so family oriented, because I feel like you're pretty charged around here. And that one does surprise me. I don't see it in you at all, although I do see the family connection. Maybe it's because you are supported in your family, like life. I don't know. I mean, that may make it okay for you. And again, I think that's, as I look around the room, that's probably like you've matured that thing better than most of us have matured any of our 5 things. Like you get it. I mean, you tolerate things that I don't know how you put up with my eccentricities. I mean, whatever, but I don't know. I think you just, maybe you get a gold star, like you mastered that one. Because it doesn't seem to ever get in your way. And it's
I'm so good at it.
I don't even know it.
It's a guiding principle for you. But it showed up more than woo or more than deliberative or command. I mean, so it's there for you.
Could it possibly be that our work environment and our facility, I think, has high integrity? And therefore, maybe it doesn't impose on her belief system as much. So it's easier for her.
It's why she's where she needs to be.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But I think there's a maturity
Yes.
level too, because there's others have belief that are not near as Sure.
Has it, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Who has it?
You'll see that it looks really different from person to person.
I want to add too, just because I don't want to miss it. Heather, I think there's probably areas and where you're particularly supercharged, like motivated to make things happen. And my guess is that that happens when you're acting in service of one of your stronger beliefs. And that's why it's in the execution category. Like, belief is a weird one. Like, why is it an executing theme? But I really do think that what happens is when you're acting in accordance with one of your values, it supercharges you. And I think that would be a way to identify your higher order beliefs. The things you take the most actions on and the most intense or strongest or determined actions on are probably revealing what you value most.
Okay, so, yeah.
Like your work ethic, like you are so dedicated to taking, like it is a firm belief of yours that like you have to take care of all of us and keep things going, and you can tell it's something you truly believe, because even when we give you an opportunity to like give it to someone else, like you will not do it, and that's responsibility too. But I also think it's because of you believe this, your sense of purpose here, like I don't know how to explain it, but you're a really strong work ethic, and I think that
I
goes
want to see it
to your belief.
succeed, and
Maybe you see that.
yeah.
See if we can-
Absolutely. Well spoken.
Miriam that has it as her number
Well,
4.
when you look at all of her 5, she's, there's the ruts.
She's in the
So they're talking about an individual that in our organization that has that as well, belief, and like they're just like everything you think of when you think of the rut for belief.
She's all
Combative.
execution.
Yeah,
She falls under all her top 5 are all execution.
like this isn't how it should be.
Yeah.
This isn't fair. Whatever.
So it sounds like all the ruts that she's, you know.
It'd be interesting to know her other top 5, because that would be kind of a great example of, you know, how, like for Heather, how the responsibility is reinforcing the belief in a positive way around work ethic. This person, if she's in a rut, I think you said she, looking at those other 4, like how are they reinforcing the belief? And then there's a lot that you would want to you need those 5 to really get a good handle on how you might help somebody out of a rut. Because if you just go after, okay, it's helpful to know, okay, belief, this is the rut for belief.
But she's in a rut with all of her things.
Right. And that's sometimes if you know all of that, you have to almost have that conversation as a whole, because it's a complicated conversation, but if you have that in front of you, you can look to the different ruts and matches and mismatches where one alone isn't going to give you enough of a direct line.
Well, and I
She
think
has achiever, responsibility, consistency, belief, and discipline. Those are her 5.
And I see all of
She's in
those. And maybe it all comes down to, and I'm not saying someone can't flip the switch, but it's like that, you know, individual we've talked about in the past, Adam, too. Just open or closed mind. And if she doesn't matter how amazing you are, how much you want to help somebody, if they're not open to it.
Exactly. And there comes a point where, you know, we call it mature versus immature themes. We can call it a lot of things, but yeah, it does come down to sometimes like you said. But she has a lot that's reinforcing, and she has a lot of chances where things can bump up against those. So like the consistency about the fairness, the discipline, if things are in, you know, she's setting up maybe systems, and if other people aren't respecting those systems and interrupting them, and maybe, you know, I'm just riffing here because I do not know the situation of the person, you can take it or leave it. But, you know, if somebody's interrupting those systems that might or might not even be appropriate for the situation, that's going to be a problem for her. And the belief in the consistency, it's going to be an even bigger problem than someone with just discipline and other things. So that's where you start to see like, okay, you know, in the day-to-day, what is kind of triggering that response? Is it that somebody's interrupting her systems? Is it that somebody's not playing by the fairness rules? You know, is it that they're going against the beliefs? But she has a lot of energy backing up that kind of sounds like reactivity. So, and what was the other? I know I'm just focused on those, but what were the other?
Achiever, responsibility, consistency, belief, and discipline.
Responsibility too, yes.
Yeah.
And achiever if it's about getting things done.
Achiever was her number one.
And I mean, that would be, there's a lot, we could really talk about that one for a while.
Great idea
Yes,
too.
great.
But on
I
a-
did. So maybe I could call you and we could talk to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. I may do that offline.
Yeah, because I mean, if you know, sometimes if you kind of picture what all of those together must feel like,
Ooh, it's intense.
yeah, you're not going to get a chilled out person usually with those 5. I'm saying it can happen. I mean, they're probably out there, but yeah, I'd love to totally be up for that.
Yeah.
A totally different insight
It's
into
very-
that person once you read
Right.
those.
Uh-huh.
And then in order to, because I really want to help her, you know, get out of her ruts and be better so she recognizes those things that are frustrating her. And I recognize, okay, hold on, where are you so I can help her, you know, be successful? Because that is a goal, but yeah, it is difficult.
I can understand why that might be. From the sound of it and knowing those 5, yes. Well, and I think that's such a great example too of like, you know, you want to make that person's individual environment fit better for the organization, for the individual. It'll be better for everybody, right? And you see how when it is a good fit, when those themes are operating in different people and in different ways, it's just so much easier. Like there's just so much more flow, right? So it's definitely a good and positive place to start. That's why I like the language of this around kind of, it gives you an understanding of where this person is coming from. Before it was like, what is happening?
I wish everybody could just walk around with their themes posted so that you,
So helpful.
when you approached them, just tattoo them.
Well, actually, we're running right up against our time, and we want to respect that. So we have another piece we want to talk about. Looks like it'll be for next time. Is one of the things will be triggering discretionary effort and some ways to do that. So it'll be a context for as you go to implement your POM, you know, some actual kind of just context around how to begin thinking about it. So we'll talk about that next time. We'll definitely be here if you want to talk to us, call us. The homework for next time, the Thinking Themes videos, it's our last set of themes, and then you'll be through all 34, and you guys are really getting a great handle on these. And then to review the POM, just it's all in there. You'll see it. So, you know, thoughts.
This is the POM for creating a strengths-based culture that we brainstormed last time.
Yes. So those are the 2 things we want for next time. Any questions, comments?
You guys, I just, you know, going back to week 1 to now, I just see so much progress, and like, this is like really getting into your conversations with each other, and you're using these tools very intelligently. And so it just makes us so excited to see that happening, because that's really what we want to see is a strengths-based culture, a better individual environment fit, better engagement. And all of this leads to just a better environment where you're taking care of problems. If somebody's not able to meet someone's needs, then just call Patricia. You know, But I mean, it's that kind of example where each of you brings something to the party, and it just makes it more fun. And I'm excited for you guys and looking forward to keeping it going.
Thank
And
you,
that's
Adam.
that comes from somebody with positivity as his number 33 theme. I mean, basically, if that's my 33 theme, all of my themes might be higher than your top themes. I'm not bragging, but that's just what some people might say.
Very positive.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Thank
see you next
you.
time.
Have a great week. We'll see you next
Bye.
week.